you can't remove the human emotional experience from your decision making. And again, even if you're my logical, perceived, unemotional people, even those people as well, you can't remove this world from your decision making. So my theory is, why not learn about it as much as possible and harness it to be a more effective leader? Because not only every leader has this grid of emotions and feelings that drives our decision making, but everybody that you're leading also walks around with their blood type,
yep.
with their emotional grid. You can't separate them. So, rather than not talking about the elephant in the room, which is emotions and feelings, again, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a military leader, let's talk about it and learn about it and even master it to maximize our combat effectiveness. Again, whether you're military or not, your business effectiveness in whatever arena you're in. That's my 2 cents, bro. Welcome to the EQ for Entrepreneurs podcast. Like most business owners, you already know you need good business and marketing strategies to scale and be profitable. But at some point, you've hit the dreaded wall where you feel stuck and frustrated. EQ for Entrepreneurs is for business owners and leaders who are honest enough to admit that they just might be the ones holding their business back and are brave enough to change that.
We're Noble and Kathy, and every week we're having candid conversations about all things emotional intelligence and how growing that has allowed us to get out of our own way and is radically transforming both our businesses and our personal lives. This is the secret sauce strategy for modern entrepreneurs who are tired of hustling without seeing results and want to grow a business and a life that they love.
Entrepreneurs, leaders, and influencers, welcome to this episode where I have the privilege of actually being interviewed by a Navy veteran who worked on naval submarines. Imagine that job. That would be no joke. We discuss the importance of and role of emotional intelligence in leadership and how EQ can help the transition process of veterans out of the military and into the civilian world successfully. At EQ for Entrepreneurs, we love helping entrepreneurs navigate the emotional journey of owning a business. If you get value from this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you shared, rated, and reviewed it. We also want to let you know about our exciting announcement of launching our EQ membership site for those of you at a phase in your lives where you're ready to get traction in your emotional growth journey. Join our waiting list to get access to an encouraging community, tools, resources, and a game plan to grow your emotional intelligence at eqforentrepreneurs.com/the growth lab. That's eqforentrepreneurs.com/the growth lab. Enjoy the episode. Boom, Big Rob, what's up, man?
What's going on? How are you?
Great to meet you, brother.
Good to meet you too.
Thanks for doing this, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad I reached out and you responded and we could get this going. I'm excited to have a little chat.
Okay, Rob, now how did you connect with me again?
So I actually stumbled across one of your interviews on the Military Leadership podcast, and I reached out on Facebook to see if I could ask you a couple questions about EQ and kind of transitioning military members, and you were great and allowed this interview, so I'm really excited to get it going.
Great, Rob. That's great. I'm excited now. And why are you doing this interview?
So it's for a class in one of my college classes that I'm doing. I'm a project management major, so I'm kind of trying to figure out some leadership stuff, and I think EQ is a great way to do that.
How did you get introduced to the whole topic of EQ?
I actually stumbled across it in one of my previous classes. It was one of the soft skills we were learning about, and it's something I'd never really run into. It was kind of a new term for me. I was in the military for 6 years, and it was something that was never brought up. And then I transitioned to the civilian world, and it was kind of a new term, new lifestyle for me. So it's something like kind of caught my interest.
That's great. And then, dude, what did you do in the military? This is amazing. I never met someone like this.
I was a submarine torpedoman on the USS Montpelier out of Norfolk, Virginia. So spent a lot of time under the water.
What's that like, man? What's that experience like?
It's like living in a high school hallway, honestly. It's there's not a whole lot of room. You know everybody. Your lockers are real close together, and it's quite an experience.
Wow. How much total time did you spend underwater?
At one time, about 2 months.
And how about collectively? Like all together?
Collectively, probably about 3 years.
Oh,
yeah.
Did you ever get claustrophobic or anything?
No, I'm a pretty small dude, so there's plenty of room for me, but it gets bigger the longer you're down there. As strange as that sounds, you kind of get used to it, and your surroundings kind of expand on you a little bit.
That's fascinating, man. Okay, I'll turn it over to you, man. But that's so fascinating, man. So thank you for your service, Rob.
Thank you for your support. I appreciate it. Thank you for your service as well. So kind of one of the first things I want to talk about is in leadership, whose responsibility do you think it is bringing up emotional intelligence? Do you think it's whether it's in the private sector company's leadership, or is it the individual that is trying to learn about leadership?
That's a great question. So my thoughts are the responsibility of growth, personally and professionally, fall on the individual. Now, that being said, like you experienced, and now I've been in this emotional growth world now for 3 years, very intentionally, what I have found is the same experience you have had. Most people don't even know what EQ is. Two groups know what it is. The corporates, the C-level corporate guys, the senior C-level folks, and academia. Those two groups have heard of EQ and talk about it and all that stuff. But all the rest of us in between that are not in those two segments haven't had any exposure. And so I would say that if someone is in leadership and has heard about or been exposed to emotional intelligence, man, just the impact that it's had on my life, personally and professionally, I would encourage them to share that with everybody in their organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think from my experience, it's something that I stumbled upon and never really had experience. And the more you look into it, the more it makes sense. And you kind of do it. You do it already a little bit, but getting that full picture definitely helps out a lot. So this one's kind of more military centric. Do you think EQ has a place in leadership in all situations in the military? So it's talking about front lines in combat, all the way back to stateside and the supply system, something that's not as hectic, not as adrenaline filled. Do you think it has a place in both sides?
Rob, man, dude, check this out, bro. I'm going to tell you that if you have a pulse, you are already impacted by EQ, whether you are aware of it or not, bro. Either a lot of it or a lack thereof, right? Everybody is impacted by this whole world of emotions. Everybody. I don't care what your MOS is, or I don't know what you guys call the Navy, but I don't care what your military occupational specialty is. I don't care what your job is in the military, combat arms, non-combat arms, ninja sub, torpedo guy, or infantry guy like me. Everybody is directly and indirectly impacted by this concept of emotional intelligence. Everybody. Again, whether you're aware of it or not, you are making decisions on a daily basis as a direct result of your emotional world.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And check this out, Big Rob. The other thing too is like, even for my dude, this is so funny. Even for my hardcore logical guys, like, oh man, this is all EQ, emotional intelligence, all warm fuzzy stuff, and this is all, again, in my world as an infantry guy, dude, it 20 years ago, if you had told me, okay, guy, if my battalion commander had sat down with me and said, hey, we're going to sit down and have an officer professional development on emotional intelligence, dude, the whole room would have got up and walked away. Like, what are you talking about? Like, if it does not involve shooting somebody or blowing something up or killing somebody, dude, I do not want to be talking about some warm, fuzzy, kumbaya, smoke and mirrors, you know what I mean? And what's funny is, even that mindset is coming from an emotional spot. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So even in that, my thought process 20 years ago, that was from where I was at emotionally, right? And so you can't run away. In fact, it's so one of my business buddies, Big Cheese in the Big Cheese CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, and he said, no, but he's like, I think the way that we can streamline and add efficiency to decision making is just make decisions with no emotion. And I said, this is after I've been on this emotional growth journey for a few years, and he has not been. And I said, dude, just even you saying that doesn't even make sense. Right? Because it's like this. Saying that comment is the equivalent of saying this: make a decision without your blood type. You can't do it. Like, or make a decision with a different blood type. Like, you can't remove, even for my hardcore, and he's a hardcore logical guy. Even for my hardcore logical guys out there, and ladies, I'm not just generally guys, just everybody, you can't remove the human emotional experience from your decision making. And again, even if you're my logical, perceived, unemotional people, even those people as well, you can't remove this world from your decision making. So my theory is, why not learn about it as much as possible and harness it to be a more effective leader? Because not only every leader has this grid of emotions and feelings that drives our decision making, but everybody that you're leading also walks around with their blood type, with their emotional grid. You can't separate them. So, rather than not talking about the elephant in the room, which is emotions and feelings, again, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a military leader, let's talk about it and learn about it and even master it to maximize our combat effectiveness. Again, whether you're military or not, your business effectiveness in whatever arena you're in. That's my 2 cents, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. Kind of leads into my next question perfectly. So thank you for that. You think it would be an effective use of time to train every military member and how to leverage EQ as a leader?
100%. And for just the reasons that I just got done saying there, you cannot take out emotions from decision making and from your being. You can't do it. Even if you think you're well, no, but you just don't understand me, dude. I've been studying people for 2 decades. Like, God gave everybody has feelings and emotions. Like, again, that's like saying, well,
you don't understand me, Noble. I don't have blood. Like, no, dude, everyone's got blood, right? I don't care what, you know what I'm saying? And here's the thing, those kind of people, and I was one of those guys. I was in that camp, not because I was a super logical guy. It was just because I was raised in a household where we never discussed our feelings or emotions, ever. We had no, and I love my folks, so I'm not trying to bust on my folks. It's just what they knew, right? Dad's passed away a long time ago, 10, 11 years ago. Mom's still around, and I'm so thankful for my mom and stuff, but they didn't know any different. And when we would get in what I call intense family fellowships, right, we'd argue and stuff like that. But, my mom's a Hispanic, little 4'10" Hispanic lady. And so, I call it a Tasmanian angel. And, and so what would happen is we'd get these big giant arguments and yell and scream at each other, and whoever yelled the loudest won, right? That was kind of how we did stuff. But then we'd stomp off into our respective corners of the house and come back 10, 30 minutes, an hour later, like nothing ever happened. So there was no apologies, no conflict resolution, no acknowledgement of feelings and emotions. And so for me as a leader, I went to West Point, I was an infantry officer in the 82nd, all this stuff. And if someone said, hey, dude, you've got emotions and feelings, I would like, dude, what, don't cuss at me. Like, what do you know? Emotions and feelings, like, what are you talking about? That's, girls have emotions and feelings. I don't have emotions, right? That was my mindset. I'm just being honest with you. That was my mindset. And so, but I think those people are even the scariest, right? Guys like me who like, oh, no, I don't have any emotions and feelings, and, that's for sissies or that's for girls. Dude, that's like the scariest guy or the scariest person who's just not even aware of them at all, right? Because now, not only do you, it's like it's like having a weapon and not knowing that it's locked and loaded at any given time. You know what I'm saying? And not knowing that you have it, not knowing that it's locked and loaded, not knowing that it can go off at any moment. And so now, let me say this big disclaimer too, for before, if we haven't lost some folks yet already with people thinking I'm a warm fuzzy guy. I mean, I am a warm fuzzy guy, but for people that think that this is a warm fuzzy issue, when, this dynamic, again, now with this whole locked and loaded weapon of our emotions and feelings, for those that are unaware of it, that's locked and loaded. The cool thing is, as you grow emotionally, as you grow your emotional intelligence, that doesn't mean that you are now controlled by your feelings and emotions. It actually means the complete opposite. That you're informed by your feelings and emotions, but not controlled by them. Whereas before my emotional growth, even though I was the guy that would have told you like, oh no, I don't have any feelings and emotions and stuff, and I would have looked at you like dead in the eyes and told you that, I was the guy that was completely controlled by emotions. If I got triggered, if you looked at me the wrong way or said something that set me off, dude, we would have immediately started a throwdown, right? I would have immediately, I call it Hulk mode. Right, I would have immediately gone into Hulk mode and like punch in the face, and you'd be like, "Dude, I was just, I was just saying hi to you or whatever, right?" But because I had no emotional control, and how would that have impact? Like, let's say I was I don't know what they call them in the Navy, but let's say I was your squad leader, platoon leader, and you said something or did something that triggered me, and I gorilla stomp you, and you're like, "Dude, what is going on?" Like, what, man, right now, how would that have changed our working relationship? How would that have changed your performance? How would that have changed my performance? How would that have changed the environment and the culture of the unit, of the organization? Dude, conflict in a sub is a whole nother ballgame, right? You want to talk about impact in an organization's performance. I can only imagine, dude, having unresolved conflict in a sub where there is nowhere to hide, and you're just around each other, dude, that would be intense. So
Yeah.
yes, sorry, long answer, but yes.
No, absolutely. I enjoyed the insight. And, actually, from my experience, there was never unresolved conflict. It was always very abruptly resolved, and you just kind of said how you felt, and that was the end of it. So, unfortunately, in my time, leadership wasn't really something that was focused on from a training perspective. It was more something you picked up along the way. And in my experience, it was you picked up the bad habits and realized, here's how bad leaders lead, in my opinion. I'm not going to do that. And there was never formal training. Do you think that something like EQ has its place in like TAPS or transitional GPS for departing military members? Or is that something that should be done at like an earlier on stage?
So, dude, I would say it's both and. I would say it's both and on the front end and the back end and in the middle. Because, dude, we've been on this journey for 3 years now, read a truckload of books in this space. And, dude, we're still like, so if I was in kindergarten before, right? If I was in kindergarten before, and 3 years ago, I'm maybe in third grade now. And so, and that's after reading lots of books and discussing it daily with my wife. And like, so dude, training, because I've also done executive coaching. And one thing I've realized is like, it's very difficult to make long-term changes just from a 30-day course or from a 2-week course. Like, oh, here, read this book on EQ. Like, oh, okay, got it. I'm emotionally intelligent now. That's not how it works, bro. That's the thing about emotional intelligence and emotional growth is, dude, it is a process, man. It is a process. So I think it's critical, in my opinion, at the beginning and throughout and at the end. Honestly, now this is going to be for all my combat arms guys out there. They're going to like, this is going to be sacrilegious, what I'm about to say. But again, I'm airborne ranger, all that stuff. That's my background, jump master and stuff. I would almost, this is how important I think this stuff is. I would almost argue that emotional growth training and equipping is almost as important, if not as important, as your tactical training for your job. Because again, how many times have I seen it in my military career? And I didn't do 20 years, I did 5 years, but even my 4 years at West Point and in the business world, how many times? In fact, check this out. I asked a battalion commander, and I don't remember his name off the top of my head. He was an infantry, a line battalion, infantry battalion commander in the 82nd Airborne Division. And I asked him this question. Have you ever seen, now I didn't phrase it in terms of emotional intelligence because again, not many people are familiar with that verbiage. I said, how many times have you seen leaders make poor decisions that negatively impacted the unit as a result of a personality conflict? And dude, check this out, Rob. This is true story. He said, Noble, there have probably been at least 37 soldiers that have died as a result of a personality conflict. From two generals up here, they made a decision based on a personality conflict that ultimately led to the deaths of 37 soldiers.
Wow.
Dude, so tell me that emotional growth and emotional intelligence is not important. And I'm talking generals, bro. I'm not talking little PFC Snuffy who just has his rifle and that's all his responsibility is. I'm talking generals, bro. And this is from a battalion commander. This, and they're, dude, because here's the deal. You can be technically and tactically competent, but if your head isn't in the game, how effective are you going to be? You could be the Army's greatest sniper on the planet. But if your headspace is off because you're thinking about the fight you had with your wife, because your company commander's treating you like crap and is acting like a 5-year-old or whatever, right? Whatever the scenario is. If you are not able to handle heavy emotional stuff that happens to all of us in life, if you've been around longer than 5 or 10 years, man, you've probably already started to build up some emotional baggage, and you don't have some emotional coping mechanisms, it will absolutely directly impact your business or military performance 100%.
So absolutely. So through my research, I found a large push between the military and academia between like 2011 and 2013 about the military using EQ. And then through my research, it kind of tailed off after those years. Do you think the military jumped on EQ as a possibility and found it wasn't feasible, or are they still using EQ in some training in the military?
Okay, so my disclaimer is I've been out for a long time, dude.
Okay.
I've been out, probably longer than you've been alive. So I've been out a long time. Now, that being said, I still have a truckload of friends of mine that are still active duty. Now, in the space that I'm the most familiar with is the Army. So the other branches I'm not familiar with. But I will tell you, for what I have heard from my Army buddies that are, lieutenant colonels, and I've even got a general buddy that's my classmate. Actually, he's a 1-star. And I have heard, so when one of my buddies was a battalion commander, infantry battalion commander, he said that they did a personality profile on him. And they had subsequent access to like a psychologist as part of the brigade, which is a big giant unit, which has about 1,000 people in a brigade for Army anyway. And I said, okay, because my wife and I've been doing personality stuff for 20 years. So back when I was a lieutenant, I was doing personality stuff and that kind of thing. And he said, no, there's no concurrent stuff. It's just they give you the personality test. They tell you what personality you are. And, like a Myers-Briggs or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And then you have access to a psychologist. And you sit down with a psychologist like one time and like, okay, here's what your personality is. And then I said, okay, then what they do? And they said, well, that's it. Then now, that's it. I'm like, dude, in my opinion, after studying people for 2 decades, okay, this is great. This will totally apply to my tactical buddies. Is it enough to just know that you have a 9mm on your hip? Is it enough to just, I know the basic specifications of my 9mm. My 9mm is made by Glock or whatever, Smith & Wesson or whatever your brand is, and it takes a 9mm round, and it goes at this velocity this feet per second. It has this torque. It has this power. Okay, that's great. You know all that stuff about it, right? That sounds pretty high speed. Can you hit the target? Can you hit a 10-meter target? Can you hit a 15-meter target? Can you hit a 20-meter target? Can you hit a 50-meter target? Can you hit a target under duress? Can you hit a target when you get woken up at 3:00 in the morning after someone punches you in the face? Can you hit right? So just knowing that, I have a 9mm on my weapon, and I know the basic function. If anybody that shoots knows that if you don't keep up on that skill set, you will absolutely lose it. That's shooting is and again, not even just like going to the range, but doing some real scenario training under stress, under pressure, because stress, right? Again, emotions, right? Throw emotional intelligence in the mix. It's all fun and games until someone starts swinging at you, right? There's another amazing book. It's called Crucial Conversations. Amazing book. It's all fun and games until your emotions start to pump. And as soon as your emotions start to pump, or in other words, like your adrenaline starts to pump, this is physiological. This is a fact. physiologically, as your adrenaline increases, your ability to think decreases. Because now when your adrenaline starts pumping, your brain goes into, it goes into, right, because we're survival machines, right? Our brain goes into two thoughts, fight or flight. So all this other cognitive processing ability and thinking about, well, let's look at the 10 different scenarios that are going on right now as this bad guy comes at me with a knife or whatever, right? No, it's very tunnel vision. And again, if you are not mentally, emotionally prepared for some of this stuff, it can have catastrophic outcomes. You know what I mean? So anyway, I totally got off, but hopefully
no, that's fine.
Hitting some points that are relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. So a study conducted by Duke.
So this is what I was going to say. Real quick, Rob. This is what I was going to say. So my thing is, so in terms of, what the military has done, like they started back in the days, and are they still doing it? I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know if they're still teaching EQ, all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure that they rock that personality stuff, which is good. That's a great aspect of being self-aware and others aware, which are two components of emotional intelligence. But it's not just enough to know that, okay, I've got a 9-mil. Oh, I'm this personality. I'm EFNJ, or I'm EIT, whatever the things are, right? I'm whatever your Enneagram is. Okay, yeah, you know what it is, but dude, do you know how to use that weapon? Are you familiar with it? Do you know how to use it in this scenario? Do you know how to use it in this scenario? How do you respond if someone's a different personality? What if they're that personality? What if they're this personality, right? So my thing is that if you're not using the tool of emotional intelligence consistently, you will never become proficient at it. That's just my unprofessional advice, right? Because I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I don't have a PhD in EQ. This is just in my journey as an entrepreneur and veteran in emotional growth space that I feel like, again, like shooting, if you do not shoot it with, consistently in different scenarios, you're not going to be as prepared as you think you are just because you have a 9-mil. You have to train consistently, in my opinion, in this space of emotional growth, or you are not going to be proficient at all. Yeah. Because the other thing too with emotional growth, Rob, is that, dude, the journey can be a little scary, right? Because number one, it's an unknown. And what do most people do with unknowns? Oh, afraid, it's fear, right? What emotion is tied with unknown stuff? A lot of fear. Whoa, I don't know, Rob. Let me kind of stay away. Da-da-da. Same thing with our emotions. When when I started this journey, and even still sometimes, an emotion will hit me, and my default is, crap, I don't know what this is. Let me run away. Let me push this away and not deal with it because, man, I'm scared of this. I don't know what to do with this, right? So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you made a lot of great points, and I understand that you've been out for a while. I just wanted to get some insight. I know you still have some connections, so I definitely appreciate that.
Oh, dude! In fact, so that conversation with Drew in the Military Leaders podcast, dude, he's going to be a brigade commander. He's a lieutenant colonel promotable, and I asked him. I said, dude, so are they? Is the Army talking about this? And I will just say this: it didn't sound like in my conversation with him, it did not sound like the Army, at least the Army anyway, is talking about this stuff. And if they are, they're sure not talking about it enough to where a senior leader like that is familiar with it yet.
Okay. So this one actually kind of goes more towards the veteran side of stuff. A study conducted by Duke's School of Business in 2019 found that employers believe veterans are less suited for jobs that involve social emotional skills and interacting with people than their non-veteran counterparts. With that being said, should the military be doing more to prepare veterans and departing military members with emotional intelligence and kind of in a more broad stroke soft skills and stuff like that?
100%. 100%. Dude, I can't tell you how many folks I have talked, some of my, my Army buddies and stuff, that again, they're getting the skills or pseudo skills of, here's how to write a resume. Here's how to dress on an interview. Here's when they ask this, you say this. And for a soldier, I can memorize a set of behavior, of skills, of okay, write my resume like this, dress like this. Okay, I say this. But dude, if you don't have the interpersonal skills to communicate about yourself, to communicate what you've learned in the military in a way that is pleasant, articulate, clear, and receivable, I don't care how smart you are. I was the top in my military unit. Dude, President Jones doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right? The HR hiring manager could care less how many badges and tabs you have. Or I spent 3 years underwater guarding the nation's. Who cares, bro?
Yeah.
You have no people skills.
Yeah.
You can't talk to a wall. Like, so yes, 100%. I think that the military, and again, I'm saying that without the knowledge of what the Air Force and Marines and Navy does. Maybe they're on it, but I can speak for the Army. When I was at we just moved from Fort Bragg. And so, dude, I was around military people all the time, and I'm still in Colorado Springs around a lot of military people. But and as happens, oftentimes, as soon as whatever contractor wins the award to train that particular area, it just turns into a finger drill, because now I won the contract, I got my $1 million, and now I can come up with whatever I want to. Here's the outline, here's my POI, my period of instruction. But then when it comes to the actual application, the implementation of that training, what I have experienced on the Army side is with a lot of contractors and stuff. Not all of them, obviously I'm generalizing here, but a lot of it just gets finger drilled. And ask my buddies, we call it in the Army, we call it ACAP, Army Career Assistance Program or something like that. When folks are, once they start to ETS, end time of service in the Army, they go through ACAP or whatever it's called. I don't know if they've changed the name on it yet, but as of maybe a year or two ago, they've just said they've shown me how to dress and how to write a resume or whatever, but none of the soft skill stuff, you know what I mean, is anyway. So that would be my 2 cents, dude. That I think we could definitely do a better job.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think civilian employers can do to take veterans that maybe don't have the soft skills but have the hard skills that make them an asset and kind of train them up on interpersonal and soft skills and EQ specifically?
Yeah, that's great. I would just say recognize that that's an area that the military doesn't train on. The military does not. So when you're getting this, in my opinion, an incredible asset, like you said, I love that, because veterans, there's some amazing aspects and benefits and traits and qualities that veterans do have. And so rather than throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying, okay, he doesn't have EQ, so let's disregard him, or she doesn't have EQ. No, because I would argue that a veteran has a tremendous, let's see, I don't want to get in waters here. A veteran has qualities and traits that a civilian does not have. Let me say it that way. Not that, one is better than the other, right? Because I love everybody, and they're obviously they're amazing. I've got amazing civilian buddies that have never been in the military. There are just some things that veterans experience and go through that civilians don't experience and go through. And I feel like that adds a dynamic to the veteran that can really add value to a corporate environment. On many different areas and levels. And so just knowing that, okay, so this may be an area that they may not come into the workplace with, this EQ world. I mean, they don't come into the corporate civilian environment with an EQ background. if they could create, or if they have some sort of either access to EQ training, emotional growth training, that either the company does, or that they can send them to, or, online courses, something to begin to expose that veteran to this emotional growth, emotional intelligence space, to begin to open up that window, open up that door, and really help that veteran with that journey. Because again, it is a process and a journey, and it's not going to end with a 30-day course.
Yeah.
Or a 90-day course, but like throughout their work experience. And again, man, not just veterans, but again, there are, like I said earlier, there are a lot of civilians, dude, that are not familiar with this space, not familiar with the verbiage and stuff. And so anyway, that would be how I think a civilian company could help veterans in this space. Is recognize that they probably don't have this training, and two, and accept them anyway, and then two, expose them to some sort of training, and then be patient with their growth journey, because again, it is going to be a journey.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you make some really great points there. That's awesome. That's all I've got. Actually, no, I got one more on there. With the stigma of military veterans being poor socio-emotional skills, that study said, what ways can veterans show that they might be on an EQ journey, an emotional journey, or start to have these soft skills? What's a good way to present that to your prospective employer where you actually work now?
Excellent question, Rob. Man, that is an excellent question. I think, obviously the best way is to model it, to demonstrate emotional maturity in the conversation. And again, part of that is self-awareness. Part of that is others' awareness. So expressing in the interview some self-awareness is part of expressing, wow, okay, this dude is aware of how he's feeling right now. Hey, Rob. Hey, man, thank you so much for letting me interview for this job at your company at Lysko Enterprises. I totally appreciate that. I just want to, if you don't mind, I just kind of want to start off just letting you know I'm a little bit nervous, and I'm a little bit, and sometimes what happens when I get nervous, sometimes I'll stutter, or sometimes I'll take a second to think. So I don't want you to think that my nervousness is a reflection of my competence. But if you did notice a little bit of me, squirming a little bit in my chair, please know it's nothing personal. It's just and as we get going in this interview, I will get more and more comfortable. Just something like that, right? Just being that's self-awareness. Like, okay, like if someone had told me that, I'd be like, hey, dude, thanks for telling me. Like, I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate your honesty and your openness. And who's not typically nervous on an interview? You know what I mean?
People, but
right. So that's one way. Another way is to share. Hey, Rob. I just want to let you know. So if you ask me, like, hey, Noble, so how have you prepared for this job, or this is a question I love asking people if I'm hiring somebody is, how are you growing yourself? Because for me, growth is, if you're not growth minded, in my world, you're just not someone I'm looking for. Because fixed minded people, man, I just are just very challenging for me to be around if someone's not growth minded. And so just expressing, hey, Mr. Rob, so here's a little bit about how I've grown over the past couple of years, and how I've, kind of in my transition from the military. One of the areas that I'm really working on and growing in is my emotional maturity and my emotional growth, my emotional intelligence. And how I have been doing that is, boom, right, fill in the blank. One of the books I've read is Changes That Heal by Dr. Henry Cloud. And a couple points that I've gotten from that book are boom, the concept of boundaries or the concept of taking ownership of my feelings and emotions, whatever, right? Whatever the thing is, but, communicating about how you have grown. And Mr. Rob, here's an area that I'm currently working on in the area of my emotional growth journey. Right now, one of the areas, I feel like I'm a little bit more others aware than I am self-aware right now. So the area that I'm currently working on is becoming more self-aware while still working on being more others aware also. So that would be another thing too. So it's not, so share what books you've read, what podcasts you're listening to, what areas you have grown in and what area of growth you're currently working in would be some things that I would recommend in that scenario.
Awesome. Well, that's all I've got. I appreciate your time and your information and everything you share with me. It definitely is going to help. I appreciate it.
So Rob, let me ask you, where are you at in your emotional growth journey?
I'm in kindergarten. I can tell you that. I've recently, probably within the last year, kind of started to work through this stuff and kind of figure out, hey, there is an emotional aspect to being a leader. And, like I said before, in the military, I unfortunately didn't have great role models of leadership. So I learned what not to do from them. And, when you get that side of things, you don't see stuff like soft skills, like emotional leadership and, empathy and stuff like that. So it's something that I've kind of popped up in one of my college courses, and I kind of took to it, and definitely something I'm working on every day to become a little more mindful of.
That's great. That's excellent. I want to go back to even one of the things that you said in, when you were in the sub, that one of the ways you guys did conflict resolution was you just went up to them and just dealt with it. It was very abrupt, which in my opinion, after a few years now in the emotional growth journey, is not necessarily true conflict resolution, right? And so, it's a technique, right? But ultimately, the emotions in both individuals have not been resolved. You may have been able to change a behavior, but inside, you're still saying screw you, and they're saying screw you emotionally inside, right? Yeah. And so, so that's an example. Like if a military guy takes that, because that's I would say that method of conflict resolution is I know that's definitely my experience in the military. In the infantry, in the infantry, nobody gave a rat's rear end about how you felt, right? Stop doing this or start doing that. Salute and execute. Period. That's it, right? Yeah. Not realizing or even, I would not even comprehend this stuff if you had told me this 15, 20 years ago. Not realizing that could there be an emotional reason why they're not reaching their full potential? Oh, well, that part, is that a possibility? Well, no, he's just an idiot. He didn't do what he was told. Okay, but is there a reason possibly why he didn't do what he's told? Right? How about explore that thought for a second? And the other thing I want to say is just I'm proud of you for taking this on, because it's not super widely. It's not new, because it's been around for maybe 20, 30 years, this whole concept. But it's not super widely known in many circles. And I think that, dude, just for speaking from my own experience, the impact that just a few years of working on this has had in my life I'm shocked. It has been the single greatest impact in my leadership, in my business, in my relationships, personally and professionally, than anything else in my entire life, is this whole concept of emotional growth, which is why we started the EQ for Entrepreneurs podcast. Because I'm like, man, why has no one told me about this before? Yeah. Why am I just learning this now? And I'm already in the third quarter of my life here, man. people need to know this, man. This is crazy talk. You know what I mean? So we're trying to, teach this stuff to our kid and that kind of thing so that she doesn't grow up with all the issues that I've had to overcome and am overcoming. So I'm just proud of you, Rob, for doing this, for taking this on, and please keep me posted and abreast of your journey and all that you're doing to impact, your world, your circle with this skinny. And I'd love to see your paper too.
Yeah,
absolutely. If you don't mind when you're finished with it, I'd love to check it out. So thanks again for your time, Rob. You rock like ZZ Top, bro.
Awesome. Thank you for your time. Thanks for all the help.
Absolutely, bro. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.